Good afternoon, everyone. Father Brett here. Welcome to our sermon preparation time as we look forward to the 25th Sunday of Ordinary Time in Cycle A. Gee, how quickly the Sundays are whizzing past now. We will soon be approaching the end of the liturgical year. Anyway, let's have a look at these readings for this coming Sunday. The first reading is taken from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 55, verses 6 to 9. The minute we hear that chapter 55, we know that we are in what is called the second Isaiah period. That period is usually covered in chapters 40 to 55. And the second Isaiah was focused on preparing the people to return from the exile in Babylon to Jerusalem, back to the promised land. And so we have some sense when we see that of what the themes will be in the reading. Second Isaiah. The psalm is Psalm 145, and our second reading is taken from St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. We have been reading for a number of weeks now his letter to the Romans, and now for the next about 4 weeks we will read his letter to the Philippians. The letter to the Philippians is known as one of the captivity letters. Paul is clearly in captivity, in jail, under guard, and that's in Ephesus. And so he's writing to the Philippians. He's writing to them to thank them because the Philippians had heard that he was in trouble, and they had put together, I suppose, a care package, and they had sent it to him. And he then writes to thank them for their kindness. You can get a sense in this letter, you will hear the word joy over and over again. So there is a real theme of joy in this letter. But in today's little extract, we get a sense that Paul is looking back over his ministry. It's coming to an end, isn't it? And he's looking at the struggles, his failures and hurts and weaknesses, I suppose. And he's sort of a little bit philosophical about these and considering whether it's time now to prepare to give up, to prepare to go and meet Jesus. But he also still has the sense to continue with his ministry, his service, his proclamation, his preaching of Jesus. And so that's the sort of theme, and we have that wonderful quote in this little extract. So we're reading chapter 1, verse 20 to 24, and then verse 27. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary on your account. That's quite a well-known little extract from that first part of the letter to the Philippians. And then our gospel is taken once again from St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 20, verses 1 to 16. This story of the generous vineyard owner is found only in Matthew's Gospel. It doesn't appear in any of the other Gospels. I wonder if you've noticed a sort of theme in Matthew's Gospel over these last few weeks. How often Matthew speaks about money and labor and work and treasure, which sort of backs up the idea that the author of this Gospel, Matthew's Gospel, is Levi, the tax collector, because he reverts to giving examples and using examples that he would be familiar with as a money man. And so once again we have this wonderful gospel story, parable, and it's about money and treasure and payment and labor. What's our situation here? What's our context? Remember, Matthew's community, so his gospel is being written for a community that is quite Jewish, number of Jewish converts. But over time, that little community of mainly Jewish Christians is growing, and it's being added to by Gentile Christians, those who are not coming from a Jewish background. And so perhaps Matthew is speaking about this change in the demographics of the community. The vineyard of the Lord, for the Jewish people, they were the vineyard of the Lord. That was another word for the Jews, that they were the Lord's vineyard, and the Lord was the owner of the vineyard. And they have labored and worked in the vineyard, following the laws and the commandments of God. And now here come along these Christians, and they're now entering the vineyard. And are they going to get what the Jews have been laboring for? They're going to get the same. Maybe there was tension there, and Matthew's trying to explain that God's love is so generous that it extends beyond justice. Last week in my sermon, I spoke about going beyond justice to forgiveness and mercy. That seemed to be the theme that came from the gospel in the first reading, particularly last week. Well, perhaps the theme for this week is that God is a bit crazy. His love is so incredible that it makes him a little bit crazy. He goes beyond justice, giving what people have been told, a fair day's wage, and he acts with love. And love is much, much more than just justice. And so perhaps that's the theme there, that God's love does cause him, as we hear in the first reading, it does cause him to act and think in ways that are not so easy, so common, so default for us. We tend to have different ways of judging and acting, perhaps because our love is not so generous and so full. So I think those are the main things to prepare ourselves for this Sunday. But perhaps I can ask us to reflect a little bit in preparing for Sunday. What group do you feel most comfortable in this gospel parable? Who do you identify with the most? Do you think that the vineyard owner, God, is a bit crazy? What is your reaction, your gut, when you hear how the people were, the workers were paid? What's your gut? Okay, we look forward to seeing you on Sunday for our celebration of the 25th Sunday of Ordinary Time. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and be good. Bye-bye.